This one. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the International Black Summit Interview Podcast. Tonight, we're going to be interviewing 3 of the original 5 facilitators of the International Black Summit. So if you're listening to us tonight on podcast, if you're with us in the live screening, or if you watch us later on YouTube, this is going to be a very, very special session. I've been looking forward to this session for months, and I'm so glad that the 3 of them have agreed to be with us this evening. So welcome. We really appreciate you being here with us, whether you're familiar with the International Black Summit and you've attended our events, or if this is something new and you've just scrolled and come across us somehow on a podcast or on the YouTube. We welcome you, and we hope you find something for yourself of interest tonight as we interview these really wonderful people. So my name is Grace Lawrence, and with me tonight is my co-host,
Glenn Greenidge. And we're here.
And we are going
and we're here to introduce the original facilitators of the International Black Summit. They started off, and we'll start off with a little bio. Kathryn Copper Young. Kathryn has worked extensively in the school districts of Atlanta as a speech therapist, working with younger students, developing not only their speaking skills, but also self-awareness and self-confidence. Kathryn is also a community leader, working with a variety of groups and organizations, supporting them in defining their organizational visions. Kathryn has a BA degree in speech liberal arts from the University of Louisiana-Monroe, a specialist degree from Ball State University in Indiana, and a master's degree in speech pathology. She has also served on the faculty of Xavier University and Clayton State University. Over to you, Jackie Grace.
Thank you. So in addition to Kathryn Copper Young, who's with us tonight, we also have Robbin Randolph. And a little bit about Robbin, I'm just going to read a little bit here. So Robbin Randolph currently works with the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health on the mobile vaccine team, which was formed to bring COVID-19 vaccines and resources to underserved populations in Los Angeles County. She has a BA in sociology, an MA in urban studies, and is a certified parenting instructor. Robbin is a mother, a grandmother, and an avid student of mindfulness practices, including meditation, yoga, and Buddhism. At 71 years old, her current interests are focused around transformation, everyday spirituality, and exploring what it takes to thrive as one ages.
And the third person up, last but not least, is Mr. Perry Parks III, retired, formerly served as a vice president of government affairs in the Southern California market for Comcast Cable Company. Perry has also served as a board member for Community Partners, Community Development Technology Center, the Apple Academy Charter School, Challengers, Boys Club, and Homeboy Industries. He received his Bachelor of Arts in Education at California State University, Los Angeles, and has a MA in Public Administration at Pepperdine University. Please join us by starting your videos. And I just
Welcome. Kathryn Copper Young, Robbin Randolph, and Perry Parks. Welcome.
Thank you.
You can spotlight them as well.
There we go. All right, we got the gang here. Welcome.
It's so great to see you. Can you see us okay?
Yeah.
I can't see Perry. I'm trying to figure out why. Let's see.
Go
I
up
got him.
to the corner. Perry, come off of mute.
It's virtually, oh, there it is.
Okay, good. Great. Well, welcome. Now, for those of you listening, so these are the original facilitators for the International Black Summit. So, Jackie Grace, you want to start off with the questions?
Sure. Sure, sure. So, you know, the International Black Summit was created in 1991. We all know that. Hopefully some of our listeners will know that. And it's my understanding, because my first summit was in 1999. So the summit had already existed for almost a decade before I first attended. And so that first annual event in Atlanta in 1991, my understanding is that there were 5 original facilitators, and that the 3 of you were 3 of those 5. So just want to ask you about that first annual summit event in Atlanta, how you came to be there, what brought you there, and how you were selected to be part of that original facilitation team. So why don't we start with Perry? Perry, why don't we start with you a little bit about that?
Okay. Well, the first summit was kind of an unfolding. I can't say that we actually knew what we were doing, but and Kathryn might remember some of this history better than I do. Initially, I found out about a meeting that was occurring in Chicago from a forum leader that had, I don't think he was at this event in Houston, but it was where the germination of the seed of the Black Summit was born. And Neil Mahoney told Anthony and I that there's something happening, and I think you guys ought to be there. So
there was a previous meeting in Chicago. Kathryn, were you at the Chicago meeting?
yeah, Kathryn was at the Chicago meeting, but I'm talking about an event before that.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and so anyway, that's how I began to find out about it. That's how Anthony began to find out about it. And then there was a meeting in Chicago. Now, I think that Kathryn probably has a clearer memory of what happened at that meeting than I do. So I'll pass the baton to Kathryn and let her develop it from there.
So I'm going to respond to, I think your question was, how did I start my participation? Is that accurate?
Yeah, the question is how your first summit event, and how did you come to be selected to be part of the first facilitation team?
Oh, okay. Well, back in 1990, a group of people participated in a course called Landmark Education. It was called Productivity, Service, and Wellbeing. And at the end of that course, there's always a celebration dinner. And so the people who were there were at dinner. And as most of the people on this video know, that Pat Reed Porter and Aloma Marquis were in a conversation together. Aloma had participated in a course prior to ours, and Pat Reed Porter was in our course. And so they were talking, and this is what I know. I was at dinner at the table with my guests, with my family. Somebody came over and said, would you like to be on a call to talk about spreading this kind of opportunity to our community? And in that moment, I was a yes. I just said yes. And from that night, I don't know, the word just went everywhere. And it went out to Perry. It went out to people in Chicago. And we decided to have a conference call. And back in the day, the technologists didn't hook us up well. So we knew that we needed to get together. And so we decided, hey, let's meet somewhere with the people who had been contacted and who were a yes. And so we decided to meet in Chicago to begin to brainstorm about, well, what are we up to and how are we going to proceed from there? And during that meeting, it's where I met Perry for the first time, and Perry came to the meeting by conference call. And like he said, Neil Mahoney had introduced or had told him and Anthony about what we were up to. And he came to the call, curious to find out, being a great spokesman, just like he is. And we were enthralled with him. And that was the meeting where the people who were in attendance, there were about, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 people who showed up at that meeting. And it was in that meeting that I was aligned on to be one of the facilitators, and Perry was aligned on to be one of the facilitators. And Anthony, right?
Yeah.
And Anthony. So the three of us were aligned at that meeting, and they brought into our consciousness this fabulous woman on their team, who is Robbin Randolph, who they were saying, well, you all have to meet Robbin, and we just know she has to be on it. And so when we decided to meet again in Atlanta, we invited Robbin to be on that call. And Robbin, you can go from there, how you said yes to that.
So yeah, Robbin, I want you to, as you go into that, I just want to provide a little bit of context, because we may have listeners who are not familiar with the International Black Summit. So when you talk about, and I'd like you to speak a little bit about this connection around transformation work, Robbin, given that you've said yourself that it's one of your interests at this stage in your life. So the context that I want to add here is the opportunity, spreading this opportunity. What is that really? And I think, Kathryn, that you're talking about the opportunity around transformation work. The landmark course was transformation work. What the International Black Summit does is transformation work. And so could you speak a little bit about that as you talk about your first exposure to the International Black Summit, Robbin?
Well, the thing was, as Kathryn said, she connected with Aloma and Pat at the one of the landmark courses. And back in those days, everybody who participated in the summit had participated in the landmark forum or the EST training. And so what we were looking at was, how do we bring this to the Black community? And we had been doing that work in LA for a while. They'd been doing it in Atlanta, and I'm sure in Chicago. We really wanted to bring this transformation work to the Black community. So that's the background and the context of it. And you know, at the time I was married to Anthony Randolph. So Anthony, you know, he went to the meeting in Chicago and he came back and he said, Rob, you got to do this. And so that's how I ended up on the phone call in Atlanta. And I don't remember the phone call, but luckily, gratefully, I was aligned on, and I was also selected as one of the facilitators, the original facilitators. I think the other thing that's significant is that all four of us, Anthony, Kathryn, Perry, and myself, at that point had been trained as seminar leaders in landmark education. So that was something that we had in common. And the very first year, there were just four of us. It was, as I said, Anthony, Perry, Kathryn, and myself. And then at the end of the first summit in 1991, Jay Kenneth came up to us and said he was also, I believe, a seminar leader. And he said, oh yeah, I'm going to join you guys. So that's how we became five.
That's so interesting. You know, I've heard the story around the history and the creation of the summit so many times, and every time I learn something new. You know, like I did not know that it was a team of four initially, and then it expanded to have JKC5. And I also think it's interesting. Let me ask you, was it a requirement that you all be seminar leaders in the landmark education
we did
organization?
We didn't have any requirements. I mean, that was what brought us together, was our participation in Landmark's work. We were all participating. And when this idea was presented, this opportunity, this possibility was presented, we brought what we had, to the gathering. And so by circumstance, the five of us had all been seminar leaders, and we had been very successful seminar leaders. So so that was just by happenstance, but it was out of our participation in the transformational work that we came together at this particular moment.
I would also add that it was part of it. It was your leadership inside of Landmark, because you all had demonstrated leadership inside of Landmark Education, being a seminar director, and people look towards that as a way of, okay, well, they should be able to lead us, right, as our community. So I think that was part of it, and certainly where I looked from, that was where I was looking from. Also, I just wanted to say that Neil Mahoney was a forum leader at that time, and he had introduced the conversation to Perry and to Anthony prior to that something was going on. As things occur inside of any organization, you hear about things and you try to put your people that would be aligned with that conversation in contact. And so that's what they did with Perry and Anthony. And of course, Kat and was also part of that conversation, and Robbin was added. So that's kind of how the first event was getting formulated. And we haven't even talked about the first event yet. This is just the precursor to get things occurring.
I think the other thing that was exciting about it for me was, we were out here in LA kind of operating, I'm going to say, in a California bubble. I mean, we were doing our own thing out here, and we'd been to New York for seminar leader events. So we knew that there were other Black seminar leaders around the country, but we weren't connected in any kind of way. So the work we were doing out here had a lot to do with creating a Black community, supporting people and coming into Landmark and being trained as introduction leaders, seminar leaders. We were working with the councilman on LA City Council, bringing the Breakthrough Racing Project to his district. But that was all kind of being done in an isolated way over here on the West Coast. This particular opportunity looked like the opportunity to expand, for me, to expand what we're doing. So one, we would be connecting with other Black people across the country and other people that were engaged and committed to bringing transformation to the Black community. So I think, to me, that was what was exciting and new in this first call. Now, I didn't have a clue about how it was going to happen, or how we were going to, either, as Kathryn said, how we were going to organize it, or what role that I was going to play in it. I just knew that I was excited about the idea and the possibility that as a community of Black people and Black leaders, there was something available to us that probably at that time I couldn't articulate, but I was interested in exploring and finding out more about it.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's then turn to, as Glenn said, we haven't even gotten to the first event, the first formal annual International Black Summit event. It sounds like there were pre-meetings, pre-conference calls, discussions leading up to it. There was a reference to Pat Reed Porter, the actual originators. So you guys were part of the original facilitation team, the OG5 that we refer to. But just to mention that there were two founders, Pat Reed Porter and Aloma Marquis. And so this was their brainchild that led to then the conversations, the conference calls, the meetings, and then the first actual summit event. So let's talk a little bit about that first summit event in Atlanta, Georgia, October 7th, 1991, which is in the declaration that we generate and read. So that first event and preparing as a facilitation team for that first event, did you meet to prepare? Did you create a curriculum? Did you clear yourself? How did you prepare for that first event?
There was a whole bunch of talking, a lot of talking, and I mean, and part of it, there was kind of a negotiation occurring in the background about, you know, well, there was a whole question about, okay, so now we're supposed to be leading this. Who are you? You know, and then who are you? I don't, you know, so the first thing we had to do was get to know one another. And I can't quite remember how, so it happened somewhat by phone, but Kat, do you remember, we got together personally several times before that first summit, and no?
One time.
One time, yeah. So anyway, look, it was a work in progress. There wasn't ever, I think, any settled design plan.
Perry, you know, we talked the other day about the fact that we initially thought we were going to be using distinctions from Landmark. And as time went on, Landmark made it clear that it would not be appropriate for us to use their distinctions. And when I say their distinctions, since we were all seminar leaders, we were familiar with some of them. And so, Kat, I think you remember some of those details, but very close to the summit, we had to start all over and look at what it was we wanted to do. Do you want to add to that?
Well, what I'll add to it is I was really pissed off about that decision. That decision to not allow us to use the distinctions from the seminars pissed me off. Now,
Well, just
wait a minute, let me finish. Now, I think it was the best thing that ever happened to us, but my first reaction was that it pissed me off. And so for me at that point, it was kind of like, you know, I'll do it myself. So that was kind of the reaction that I came into the first summit with, about, well, we don't need them, you know, we'll figure, I didn't know what we were going to do, but I figured I wasn't going to let that stop me.
so this is a clarification question for me, because I had always thought that communication from Landmark came later. So that came before the first annual event?
Yeah, it came a few weeks before the annual event.
Wow. I don't know why I thought it came years later.
No. I you know, the whole thing was clearly a process. We had two formal, you know, on-site meetings prior to that annual event. We had lots of conference calls preparing ourselves. And I think one of the key meetings that we had was the meeting that we had together. We went to, was it Perry's house?
Robbins in Pasadena.
No, I think these were after we started working together.
That was after?
Yeah. Remember we met with Prema? That was before.
Okay, it was Prema. It was Prema.
Yeah. In San Francisco, yeah.
That's right. Well, we knew that we had to get ourselves centered. Just in really, you know, how to formulate, and we had a lot of respect for Prema. She was a African-American forum leader. someone who led my forum, who I respected highly. She was from in the California area. So she opened up to meet with us, and we were very happy about that. One of the things that I also want to say in this conversation is just like I was listening to Perry, and he was talking about, you know, he and Robbin and Anthony and all the work that they had done in California. And one of the things I want everybody to know, of all the people in the beginning, we all had our own vision, intention, and I think that's what made us really neat and really special, because we all came together to support each other. Because as I remember, I didn't have any, my whole thing was about family at the time. You know, like, how do you have, you know, really effective communication inside a family? And that was very important to me. And the other thing, since I had done that course, productivity, service, and well-being, what was fascinating to me was we had a great facilitator, and she allowed us, there were only like 10 of us, and to communicate. She provided a clearing for communication. It wasn't anything like I had experienced in the forum or any of the other work through landmark education. It was a clearing. So Pat had what she had, I had what I had, the other people had what they had, and we could communicate. And I wanted that for the Black community. That was why I wanted to participate. I wanted to have a space and a clearing where people could communicate at that level what was there for them, and be able to do it at an affordable price. That course cost $3,000 flying to Houston, Texas for 8 weekends. I wanted that kind of space available where everybody in the Black community could participate. So that was kind of like my driving force in all of these years of participation. The other thing is that we still weren't very clear about what we were going to do. We knew we had sent out a communication for people to come. People from all over were coming. We told them that we were committed to the Black community. We wanted to gather people who were committed to the Black community. We wanted them to come to Atlanta so we could get together and see what the hell we were going to do. And we thought an open forum like that would be the perfect space to do that. Now, how that was going to unfold, I guess we did depend on our seminar leader skills. We depended on that. We trusted in that. Now, we did think that we could use some of those distinctions of Landmark, but when we were told, you know, and they were gracious enough to have a meeting with us and to tell us we couldn't use their distinctions, but it came late. And you know what? Given what the question is this year, what is it to bring presence? We had to bring some presence to that first summit. We had to just be in the front of the room and be present with people, present with what they had to say, whether they were good things, bad things, whatever, presence. I think, now this is looking back, okay? This is a looking back conversation. But when I look at, and I'm speaking for me, what I stood in was my trust in Robbin and Anthony and Perry out of the relationship that we had built thus far. And I think we were all very committed to that. And I think that's been one of the grandest thing for me, one of the grandest things for me in my participation is the relationship that I developed with them and the trust that we have for one another.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go right ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I was just going to add, Kat, that I do know that we came up with a couple of questions to start the conversation with, and I don't remember how we came up with it, but the first question was, "What is it to be Black?"
Yeah, you're right. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think the first question we might ask is, what do you say about Black people? I think was the first question. And we started filling boards up with what we say about Black people, and it had all the things that we say about Black people, and all the things we say about Black people. You can't trust them, they're lazy, they're steal, blah, you know, all those things went up on the board. And then once we got all that up on the board, the question was, who's saying that? You know, so at that moment, we had to look and see who was saying those things about Black people, and who was saying those things about Black people was us. You know, so that generation was, and those, all that dynamic was part of what went into that first weekend, and it was out of that, I think, that the formation of the Declaration began to evolve. Do I have that right? Is that timing right, Kat?
I'm not sure, actually.
But it was in that first weekend, and I remember the
Yeah,
first
I
question.
can say that. I can
Yeah.
say that. I really, everybody, I don't remember. I really don't remember. I can give you snippets that we went up there, and Robbin say, hey, let me tell y'all something. Robbin was was one of the four. So you better be sure we had some questions going up there, okay?
What?
We had some, and I'm surprised you don't remember, Robbin. But we didn't
Well,
go up there not knowing what the hell we were gonna say, okay? We had some questions. Because Robbin was that for us.
Absolutely,
Y'all
absolutely.
Robbin's like, nuh-uh.
The details. Robbin had the details. Yeah,
The details.
that's
We're
right.
gonna have an outline.
You had an outline,
We
and
may not
Robbin
follow
was
the
keeping it.
outline, but we're gonna have an outline. So I know, like she said, what is it to be Black? Yes. I also know that part of the conversation was, you know, people had an opportunity to say what their commitment was to the Black community.
Yes.
If you all remember, I remember
I
that
remember
those were the times of, what was that term? Economic empowerment. That was really big. We had a lot of people, you know, in that domain, and in terms of spirituality and people wanting to, you know, have intimate relationships. You know, people really had an opportunity in that first summit to say what they were up to and what they wanted for the Black community. But one of the things that I think was very interesting about that first summit was we called it the Black Summit. Remember?
Mm-hmm.
Now we had people from all over the United States, the Caribbean, Africa. We had people everywhere, and everybody did not refer to themselves as Black. And I want y'all to know, we went about 20 minutes straight. People say, I'm not Black, I'm not Black, I'm African American, I'm Trinidadian, I'm so. About 20 minutes, and we stood there and we let people say, and there came, do y'all remember? It's just like, it wasn't anything we did.
No, it was nothing you did.
Right, Glenn, you were there.
Yeah.
It was nothing we did.
No.
People just communicate about their whole, I don't know, their whole mind thing about labels and how we are labeled by society and how we label ourselves. And that all got communicated, and there came a point where our unity, it was only just, hey, we just want people. We just want people. It just got to that point. Do you remember anything about that? Any of you? I mean, Glenn, I know you were there, Robbin.
Yeah, what I was going to say is that the first day was really about, well, what I recall for myself. The first day was really just having people speak themselves, speak what they were up to. Why did you come to this event? You know, why are you here? You know, you came out of a letter, you know, you responded to, and people just shared. The second day is when you guys had the facility to organize the different areas subject areas, which
Mhm.
helped to formulate the declaration. So we had a group on
Economic development.
economic
Yeah.
development. We had business, economic development. We had
Relationships.
relationships. We had all the different things, taking care of our health, youth. So we had all of these groups
Media.
lined along the sides, and people had an opportunity to go visit those particular groups and mingle, and you weren't limited to that particular group, because you could kind of meet this group and then go to another group that you had interest in, but all time networking.
But to be clear, we didn't have it that structured going in. That structure was developed real time in the speaking and listening that was in the room.
On the first day.
On the
Right.
first day, it was given to us by what was occurring into the room. It wasn't like we planned that. And the fact that there were 5 of us gave us the room to gave us the capability to see 360 degrees of what was happening.
There were 4 of us, Perry.
4 of us, yeah, okay. Gave us the ability to see 360 degrees of what was happening. So we were generating and designing on the fly right there in the room.
And I think for me, the thing that I left that first summit with is that there was no one way to be Black. It was just such it was so liberating, because we had so many different kinds of people there, all Black, and I think it was before. Well, I don't remember us calling each other African Americans back then, but did we? I just remember that and I mean that we had people that could have been white who were Black. We had people that were from Africa, or it
Right.
was this whole idea that there was no one way to be a Black person. And that was just, for me personally, that was really freeing.
Yes.
I think this is, talking about the groups, again, just new information for me, just learning so much. So the groups, the topic area groups, so the one on the media, the youth, health, relationships, all of these different areas, business and the economy. I can see how each of those areas ended up finding their way and being expressed in the declaration of the International Black Summit. So I'm actually wondering, Glenn, if this is a good time for us to bring up, if we could actually bring up the one that's on our website, I could do that too. So for those who are listening or who are watching on our YouTube channel, we have a website. It's blacksummit.org, blacksummit.org. And on the website, there is a page with the declaration of the International Black Summit, which was created during this first event in Atlanta, Georgia in 1991. And in the declaration itself, it actually refers to the date at the end being Atlanta, Georgia, the date and location being Atlanta, Georgia, October 7th, 1991. Am I bringing it up, Glenn,
Yeah.
or are you?
Yeah, you go ahead and bring it up. I'm going to set it.
Okay.
So one of the things to kind of remind or to speak to the people who haven't been to the summit or certainly weren't at the first summit. So these groups set up the conversation to create the declaration of the International Black Summit. And so it started with in the room. It morphed to one of the other rooms, and then 4 or 5 people, Olubade, and Charles, and there were Charles Robinson, and there were a couple other people that were in the into the night, wordsmithing this kind of manifesto that was created from the people who were part of this gathering. And again, it just speaks to the listening that the facilitators, our OGs here, had to listen to space and allow that to manifest, because it was bubbling up, and it was what people wanted to work on. Even though we couldn't come to what our name would be, because we actually left the first event as the International Blank Summit. That
Oh,
first,
wow.
that first.
Well, I think the point I want to underline here, Glenn, is that all this work from this point on was participant driven.
Yes.
It wasn't us as the leaders
Yes.
leading these groups. This bubbled up out of the community of people who were there. And it was Illuvide and the others that decided they were going to hone this stuff overnight and come back with something. And we didn't know what it was going to be.
Right.
But they were going to come back with something, and they worked on it overnight.
Right.
And this is what they presented.
Okay, so this is what they presented, the Declaration of the International Black Summit. Glenn, can you generate it for us?
We declare ourselves, our community, and all communities whole and complete. There is nothing to do except be. We assert that we are responsible for generating community as possibility and distinction. We listen for and grant being to the possibility and creation of unpredictable results. Our conversation of, about, and for those of African descent is one of power, self-generation, abundance, responsibility, unity, and integrity with the possibility of being. We stand for the expression of our spirituality, ending the murders of our men, women, and children, building economies responsible for funding our community, maintaining wellness of being in our bodies, providing human services, establishing nurturing relationships, altering the conversation of who we are in the media, empowering our youth. We declare that our community manifests itself in the world as a contribution in the transformation of the universe. Atlanta, Georgia, October 7th, 1991. So that's what got created. Saturday night was presented to the folks Sunday.
That's right.
And we had a chance to, I think we did just a few wordsmithing on Sunday, but very little. Most of it had gotten done that Saturday night.
Yeah.
Thank you. So interesting how organic that original annual summit event was. So here we are. My understanding is that all of the participants were Black, identified as people of Black African descent, and that all of the participants also were graduates of the Landmark Forum, so that they had all also participated in that work.
Or
S
training. Or S training.
Or S training, which was
the predecessor to the forum, for those of you who aren't familiar with Landmark. So those were two different offerings. One was the first offering, and then the second one became the forum.
Right. So it evolved into, I guess, the
Yes.
forum, I guess is one way you could say it. So so then looking at the creation of the declaration, and I'm kind of curious myself, around how we got to the point of creating facilitator training and a facilitator body, because my introduction to the original 5 was when I decided to join the facilitator body, and the original 5, the OGs, the 3 of you plus JK and
Anthony.
And Anthony.
and Anthony.
Yeah.
And Anthony, you guys were the lead, you were the senior facilitators, you were leading the facilitator trainings at the time when I joined in the year 2000. So, so I'm kind of curious. We have now the first event. People come, it's an organic process that you guys facilitate. A declaration is created, and somehow between that, at some point, there is a creation of a facilitator training body. Does that happen at that first event? Does it happen a couple of years later? What's the progress there? What's the evolution?
It actually happened not at the first event, not at the second event, but at the third event in Oakland, California. I'm not sure how it happened, so maybe you two remember, but there was a request that we form a body where people could be trained to be facilitators. And I remember we were at the Oakland Civic Center or something, and there were a group of people that we met with kind of in the cloakroom or something. There was a little room after the main session, and a number of people said, yeah, they wanted to do what we did. And so at that point, we put together the training.
So I don't want to step, there's a step that's missing in here, Jackie. And we call this a declaration, but essentially it was we generated a context. We generated a context that we were operating in, a new context. This context had never existed before. And it was the context that is expressed in this declaration that gave the space for whatever got generated going forward. So the declaration declares something to be, but what allows it to persist is the context that it represents. And so if we look at this as a context, then there's certain things that fall out of it that need to come into existence in order to sustain the possibility over time. And so part of what came out of it were the structures that we had, but that got generated in the event, in the context. It wasn't us sitting in meeting rooms designing something and bringing it back to to the summit or anybody to be ratified. It was being generated real time, and we would capture the real time generation, and then we would proceed to operate out of that.
I love it. David says, I remember someone asking, how could I get to be up there in Oakland? He remembers that.
Yeah, and so the whole idea of a facilitator body, wasn't our idea. That was being demanded. John asked me, what am I present to? And I can't help but be moved by the experience of it.
So let me ask this question, because you're at the first event, you've got this great declaration, you've got these people fired up, you're going to have another event. What was your mindset? What were you thinking? What were you allowing to get generated in that moment, going forward to Highland Park, which was the next event?
I think for myself, this is going to be on YouTube, so I got to watch my language, right?
No, no,
Well,
you don't.
yeah, for me, what I was present to, that something had been generated here way beyond anything I had anticipated.
Mhm.
What I was anticipating was minuscule bullshit compared to what was created. You know, so I think going forward, we recognize that we were in the midst of something that we couldn't really define and say what we were in the midst of. But there was an energy and a moving and a movement that undergirded it. And you know, again, for me, I was present to that I was going to have to really work hard to be in the present moment with this thing. You know, if I relied on my own scheming and designing, it was going to be totally insufficient. So I couldn't be who I have known myself to be, and all of the strategies and tactics that I would use to navigate situations. I couldn't depend on any of that. I had to be in the present moment with these now 5 people, trusting them and trusting each other. You know, so I think the next year was us really getting more deeply engaged in the relationship of the 5 of us. And it got to the point where you couldn't hide anything. Even if you wanted to hide it, you couldn't hide it. You know, so JK, Anthony, Robbin, Kat, they knew everything there was to know about me. And I knew everything there was to know about them. And it was on that foundation of like complete, open, honest communication that probably those 4 people were my first model of what a clean, open relationship looks like. Up until that point, I was scheming and maneuvering in relationships, you know, trying to get over, trying to get what I needed, but there was no space for that, you know, with the 4 of them.
I think that's a good point, Perry, because I was wondering, given Glenn's question, what did we do that second year? What were we working on? And it really was working on our relationship as a group of 5, because at that point, JK had joined us, and we actually did, that may have been, we may have gotten together physically at least twice. I know we did at least once, but maybe twice that year. And Kat and JK were coming from the East Coast. And, but we talked every single week. We had a facilitator call every single week. And what Perry was talking about is we developed a relationship. The thing that I have always loved about the summit and facilitating in the summit was that we did it as a group. We were never by ourselves. It was never about any one of us. It was about the body of us. And so we did spend a whole lot of time generating our body. We weren't senior facilitators then. We were just facilitators. And what it took to generate that was clearing, which is one of the distinctions of the summit. But we cleared and we cleared and we cleared because that was our commitment to being able to listen the conversation of the summit. And I think another thing that happened for me at that first summit was my first experience, because again, we weren't doing landmarks work. We didn't have a manual in front of us. So we had to listen to space. And what we began to learn to do was listen to space so that we could hear what spirit was telling us, what life was telling us, what the room was telling us. But the room, but spirit or life speaks to us through what people in the room are saying. And so that next year was really about honing that ability. And yeah. And what came out of it, I think Kat talked about it too, what came out of it was a very profound trust so that we could get up. We always had some questions. I always, as Kat said, I always insisted that there be an outline, knowing good and well that nothing on that outline would materialize. But that was my need, you know, I'm the anal one. And but there was such trust that we could get up in front of a group of people. Someone on the chat asked how many people were at the first one. I believe there were around 100. Does anybody know?
I want to say 120.
120, 128, 132,
something.
somewhere in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I don't remember how many were in Highland Park, but that was a really, really impactful summit. But as I was saying to Perry and Kat this week, we were talking before today, that it was that trust that we had between and I don't mean it was always, you know, hunky-dory, like we would get on each other's nerves, you know, cuss each other out. There were, you know, but the trust was there, because I remember, you know, we got in front of 500 people in New York. And that could only happen. There's no way Robbin is going to get up in front of 500 people. Now, maybe the rest of them would have, but I wasn't. But it wasn't me. It was that body. And by that time, we actually had a facilitator body to back us up as well.
Yeah.
So I'm just looking to.
Go ahead.
So I'm just looking to track. So the first summit event is Atlanta, 1991.
Yes.
Then in 1992, it's Highland Park. So 1991, it's the 4 of you. 1992 in Highland Park, it's now the 5 of you with JK.
Right.
Over that year, you guys are working together as a team of 5.
Mm-hmm.
And then the following year, was the following year New York? Or what?
Oakland.
Oakland.
Right.
Oakland. Okay. So now we're at in 1993. We're in Oakland, California. It's the 3rd annual event. And that is the event when somebody requests the creation of facilitator training.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, and in that 2-year period, if participants came, were there any other opportunities for them between annual events, or was it just the annual event for them?
It was just the annual event.
Well,
Oh,
no,
there was the planning committee.
not necessarily, because remember, after the first one, we actually had teams. So those smaller teams we had like a business, 4 or 5 of us that were doing business. There was another group that was doing relationships. So we created groups going into the 2nd annual summit event. Again, we created these little networking niches for the different areas. And so those groups continued to be in conversation from the 1st to the 2nd. And in fact, from the 2nd to the 3rd, that got, the design kind of changed a little bit, and it was now groups of 5. And so out of that, we started having training the facilitators in groups of 5, but also having the participants seated in groups of 5 so that they would begin to network with each other and begin to build relationship. So one of the things for me as a participant in those first couple of years was about trusting myself. And especially at the second one, I now understand why the second one was so emotional filled for me, because you guys had done so much clearing that the space had nothing but clearing. People were sharing all of their the nasty, the good, the bad, and the ugliness of their lives, and how, you know, what they did, and having each other give ourselves. So there was the Highland Park Summit for me was just a way of freeing up all of these conversations that I had about myself that were negative, and we did it as a body. Everybody was just kind of throwing their hat in and throwing their emotionals and their contexts that they wanted to kind of clear themselves with. And that was the space that was available from the Highland Park. And then when we got to Oakland, then we were looking at more of a community space, you know, designing community for me.
The Highland Park Summit for me was just off the charts. And I have the questions up for the, I guess, first 14 years, or maybe, yeah. But it kind of gives you an idea of what we were dealing with. So the Highland Park, Michigan Summit, the question we came out of there with was, what must I transform within myself in order to transform the world? So the completion that Glenn is pointing to, I remember being up on the stage with Robbin. All of us were up there, but there was a particular passage, a particular point, and it might have been, what's the lady's face on?
Claudette.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Claudette Faison and some other people were sharing about where they were, and there was a brother from Africa that kind of introduced this with the whole notion that there was a traditional song that they sang,
Kimani,
welcoming ancestors back to the African shores from journeys, you know, overseas. And so he started singing that song. And it seemed to me that the whole room kind of fell apart or fell into some kind of an experience. And my experience at that moment was the kind of seeing the completion or being present to the Atlantic transport. So I had all these big visions of big sailboats moving across the room. I could actually visually see them, and you know, and Black people on the boats, and just, you know, ship after ship passing in front of my vision as the sharing was happening. And I was in tears. I could not contain myself in that space, and the whole room was like that. Now, yes. I don't know if everybody was in the Atlantic transition, but they were, wherever they were, we were all having a similar kind of experience and impact. You know, so Highland Park was seminal, and this question kind of captures where we were. So we were now present to the fact, the possibility we could transform something. So what must I transform within myself? Started with myself in order to transform the world. So that was the question we left 92 in, moving into Oakland in 93.
And that
it didn't happen that it didn't happen that orderly, but I mean, I can kind of sense a movement occurring out of each summit that gave us a whole new inquiry and something to look at in our own development as a community, if you will, but as individuals first, and then as a community to engage in.
I just
So,
want to acknowledge
so
something.
let's,
Go ahead, Kat.
I just want to acknowledge something in the chat that Conrad said. If you all remember, that was the summit where the conversation for Black women being queens.
Yeah.
Queens
And the relationship between Black men and Black women, the empowerment of that relationship really came forth in that summit. And then the other thing I want to acknowledge is Shakesha's comment that what we offered for people, out of those people who requested to be facilitators, is that they could come to the planning body meeting in October and make a request to be in the body.
Yeah.
And I like what she said, well, she just wanted to be like them 5 people, right? And I think that's what's really great about that is the context that Perry created, because I think that context, Perry, creates that possibility, you know, the possibility of who we were as facilitators, the possibility of people being able to stand and offer a space like that for their communities. People saw that for themselves, that they could do that too. And they wanted to be trained. You know, we trained ourselves. And I'm clear, we trained ourselves. We all came from our own different backgrounds and whatever, but we trained ourselves, and they saw that they could be trained too. And so I just want to acknowledge that, that it was in that context, Grace, that people saw that possibility that they could do it too.
And the way we got to the 5 groups, Grace, the groups of 5, was that just as Kat just said here, there were 5 of us. And you know, we had worked through now 3 summits, and that began to be kind of the structure we looked at it through. So, and trying to talk about development of facilitators, you know, we knew that there had to be a sufficient commitment to train oneself to be a facilitator. It wasn't that we were training anybody. You know, what we provided was a space that people could train oneself. And the structure we that we discovered was the 5 of us, and being brutally open and honest within that group of 5 was part of creating the clearing for the possibility of you as a facilitator. So that's the way that structure got put in place.
oh, that's, you know, it's interesting for me because I do recall when I first joined the facilitator body in the year 2000, at that point, that was part of the structure. I mean, it had already been in place for years by that point. And I was placed into a group of 5, right? And that group of 5 essentially modeled what you guys had developed in those early years in 1991 and 1992, where we were required or strongly suggested that we have a weekly call as facilitators, training ourselves, engaging in the distinctions of the International Black Summit, engaging in the question for the year. For those people who might be listening who aren't familiar with the summit, out of each annual event, there's a question for the year or an inquiry for the year. And Perry referred to the inquiry for the year that came out of 1992, which was, what do I need to transform within myself in order to transform the world? And each year we have an inquiry like that comes out of that annual event. And so as a facilitator trainee, when I first joined in a group of 5, engaging in the distinctions, engaging in the question for the year, I see how that was an organic development out of what you, the original facilitator team had created for yourselves at the beginning of the creation of the summit.
Yeah.
So,
Go ahead, Perry.
Yeah. So I think looking back over the years, I've come to the recognition that transformation doesn't happen at the level of group. It doesn't happen at the level of community. Transformation happens at the level of individual. So the transformation occurs in the individual, and then the possibility of alignment with other transformed individuals makes possible a community, a transformed community. But you know, you got to bring something to the table in that group of 5 that represents your own recognition of who you are in the matter of what's occurring in front of you, that you're actually a life generator.
That's
And-
that's a.
Go ahead, Jackie.
Go ahead, Perry. I was just noting where I went in my own thoughts around a transformed community and transformed individuals making up a transformed community, which makes a lot of sense. And I also noticed that for me, I don't know that everyone in a community needs to transform for the community to transform.
That's right.
Like if you have that critical mass, right? If you have whatever that tipping point is, in terms of, I don't know what that percentage is, 15, 20% that transforms, and then that percentage then is a catalyst for the transformation of the community.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
operating on, we are on the downside of the tipping point. You know, so we're in the process still of creating the critical mass.
Yeah.
And we're on the downside of it, and each and every individual has to generate for themselves the experience of being transformed in this work. You can't just hang out. You can't just hang out in the space or rub up against somebody and think that you're gonna be transformed.
Are you sure? I'm sure people try to try to touch the sleeve of one of the original 5.
Yeah.
Maybe just touch the sleeve.
Yeah. Don't make me a fucking idol.
So let me ask this question. We started out with this declaration back in 1991, and today the question that we're engaging is, as I become present to I am, what is it to rest in the I amness? So what would you say has the declaration given you personally, and what has it given to the International Black Summit? So I'd like to hear from each of you in terms of, what do you see that it has created that maybe wouldn't have gotten created without the declaration, that the declaration has you be present to personally, and as the impact to the International Black Summit as well. Is that clear?
I don't know if it's answerable.
Can I just say that
Okay.
that line where we say, we talk about who we are in the media,
Mm-hmm.
Altering the conversation of who we are in the media. And so we left that summit. Oh, that summit was in October. That's right. So the next thing that happened were those hearings with Anita Hill and Clarence Thomas. And I completely saw that through the lens of altering the conversation of who we are in the media. I just thought that was amazing. I mean, it was a bizarre occurrence, but I knew that it was consistent with that line in the declaration. And then the other thing for me, though, the line that's always moved me is the one about transforming the universe. I just, that our community, who we are as Black people, manifests itself in the world as a contribution to the transformation of the universe. I've always just absolutely loved that line. It just, for some reason, it just always spoke to me. And I'm just going to say that October 7th, 1991 was my 40th birthday. So I have a very special relationship to the Declaration. Yeah, anyway, that's what I have to say. Okay,
Great. Anything for you, Kat, around the Declaration and what is provided you personally?
I'm listening to see what's being given to me to say about that. Well, what's right there is the first line of the Declaration. It's where I stand. We declare ourselves, our community, and all communities whole and complete. There's nothing to do except be. And inside of that, I've always felt that if I could get to what that just be means, that the rest of the Declaration would be taken care of. And I am so grateful for the conversation that we have this year as I become present to I am. What is it to rest in the I amness? And for me, that I amness is being, is the essence of being. And as I look back over the years, I can see that every summit has brought us here. And as I look back, I can see that what brought us here was beingness. What made the difference were the distinctions, noticing, clearing, getting ourselves to that space of being so we could hear light, so we could hear how to transform our relationships. And you know, I look for the unfoldment of the Declaration in my everyday life. That's where I look for. That's where I look for my accomplishments. I look for it in my family. I look for it in where my family have asked me to come and facilitate conversations with their families, with their intimate families, with their son. And I look at it when the people in my community come to my house and want to have conversations for clearing. I look at it in my profession as a speech pathologist when I work with my children. I have a 2-year-old kid who's been in pre-K and preschool, early learning center since he was a child, since he was like 6 months, and at 2 years not saying any words. And you know, he gets referred to me, and I'm like, well, he ain't talking, what am I going to do? And the only thing I knew was to be with this child. I visited that child in his classroom for several weeks just to be with him. By the time he got to me, he was ready for me. Do you know what I mean? And one of the staff came in and said, is he talking? Is he really talking? And one thinks that that's me, that, you know, I mean, I think I'm a great speech pathologist, but look, what made the difference, I'm clear, is being present to him. Presence allowed for communication. I see that with my kid who's a stutterer, who came. I'm trying to figure out what's the problem. He's not stuttering. I can't see any visible sign. And I think he's showing like he's a smart kid. And I'm like, what is it? And it was, I said to myself, Kathryn, be with him, get present to him. And it was an instant when I saw his nose flare. I'm saying, oh, that's the breath. The breath is being cut off. Next thing I knew, we had an instant of just being present. And he started talking and stuttering all over the place. And you know what? That's what I wanted him to do. I wanted him to have the opportunity to be who he is and to stutter, because now I can shape fluency. Before then, I wasn't able to. And I'm clear. I'm clear. it's because of this current conversation that I'm in right now that allowed me to be present to who these children are. So, it's been a real thing for me to like, how are we tracking the summit? How are we tracking our successes? And I started saying, let me start tracking my day-to-day. How is it affecting my life? And it affects it on a day-to-day, moment by moment way. And the last thing I want to say, the other thing that the way I track the success is through facilitation. It's when I see people come to the summit, share their hearts out, and get to a place of freedom that they hadn't been before, that I'm clear that this conversation works. And that's enough for me to continue in this conversation. And I said a lot. I don't know if I answered your question or not, but that's what was on my heart to say.
Absolutely.
You answered questions I didn't know I had. I'm checking the time. Glenn sent me a little time check in the direct message, and
oh, it's 10 too.
Yeah.
And it is, and we haven't even gotten through half of our questions, so we're not going to get through all of them. But I did want to talk a little bit about distinctions before we complete, and the creation of distinctions, both the creation of distinctions, given that the landmark distinctions were off limits. They said that they couldn't be used, and so I was a little bit curious about how the summit distinctions were created. I'm assuming, again, it came out of the conversation, but the creation of summit distinctions, how that showed up, and then the use of summit distinctions, how, Kat, you've already talked a little bit about how you use them in your life, but that's also, I wanted to get a sense of using the summit distinctions in training, in summit events, in your own lives and careers like that. So first, the creation of them.
They occur in the conversation. They're given to us in the conversation. And it's like they keep coming in the conversation, the same one, like, what is that about? Trigger. Oh my God. What was that? Kenya?
Yeah.
Kenya, yes. Yeah. The coasters. We had the coasters, and they were.
Yeah, people would get up, and you know how people share and of course, people get up and share, and then people have their judgments. Oh no, that's not right. That's not right. So someone said trigger. I don't know who said it, but after a while, we had these nice little coasters in the room. It was a very nice hotel. And so every time somebody got to the mic and said something that people didn't like or didn't agree with, they started shaking those toasters. So it got so that it became funny and fun, and it became a lens through which we could see ourselves, our judgments. And so we worked with that. We did work with it. We really worked on distinguishing, well, what is this trigger really saying to us? We looked at it like it was saying something to us. So we started to peer into that. And we distinguished it as, some of you people, what is trigger?
Unwilling.
Triggers gives us access.
Yeah.
Trigger gives us unwilling to be within ourselves. Standing there, what access does our trigger provide for the fulfillment, the purpose of the International Black Summit?
Yeah, and so the idea of distinctions is that they often reveal a mechanistic way of being or responding. So if you could use that as the point of inquiry to look beneath that to see the condition or the mechanistic response And is that really accessing who you are or who you intend to be?
You know, one of the distinctions that is always really present for me is no out there.
Oh,
And I don't like it, but it, you know, it never fails. It never fails. If I'm willing to look at, it's not out there, it's not happening over there, it's happening over here. And again, as has been said, it comes out of the conversation, out of whatever conversation is going on in the room. And what's really interesting is I've done a lot of other kinds of things, and I'm starting to notice that some of our distinctions are present in other places. It's they get generated in the summit, but many of them are universal. But they come to us out of the interactions that we've had. And no out there is actually one of them. You don't find it a lot of places, but there are places where it's very well known that nothing's happening out there. It's all happening inside.
Do you guys each have, do you have a favorite distinction? You know, like Robbin, you just referred to that one being present for you.
Yeah.
But do you have a favorite distinction, any of you?
I love clearing. I love it. I just think that it's like for me, it was the foundation of how we became the body of five that we were. Clearing the verb is, you know, like just whatever it takes to get the stuff out of the way so that we could hear what life was giving us, what life was telling us.
Thank you. Perry, I'm noticing you're checking your time. Do you need to run?
Well, yeah, I had it booked to 6. I got something coming up. Or 9 your time, East Coast.
Is there anything you'd like to say before you complete with us? Or I can ask you one of the last questions we had here, which was, what has been the biggest personal lesson or personal benefit that you have received because of your participation in the International Black Summit? Biggest personal lesson or personal benefit from participation?
Well, the personal benefit, I think, is my life. I wouldn't have the life that I have, you know, without the people that I participated with in the International Black Summit. My life got so grounded and I got so clear about, I can't say I got clear about it, but it feels like looking back at it, I got clear about who I was and the possibility that I am in it. And so one of the things that I developed was kind of my own purpose in life. And my own purpose in life essentially comes down to, I see possibility in every person and in every situation so that the world works for everyone with no one and nothing left out. So that's who I say I am. And where I show up, that's where I'm operating from. And that comes out of the honing and the polishing that the process of the International Black Summit gave me or took me through. So I'm clear that my life wouldn't be what it is today without y'all. So I can't ask for any more than that. And, you know, quite frankly, at 78 now, you know, I'm thinking, okay, 78, maybe 10, 12, 13 more years. And I'm going to transition to being an elder. No, An ancestor. An ancestor.
No, you were right the first time.
Elder ancestor. You know, so I'm in the process, I'm in an inquiry about that. You know, because I can see that, you know, in the scope of time, if we look at the 400 years of African-American participation in this country, there have been a lot of great, insightful people that have done a lot of great, insightful work, and the conditions still persist. You know, so am I going to see it in my lifetime? I don't know, but I don't have to see it in my lifetime. I'm committed to the transformation of the Black community in the world, and I'm setting up to hand the baton to the next generation that's going to carry this work forward. You know, so, and then I can like watch on high as you guys have miraculous lives. So that's my intention.
That's Perry.
Yeah.
That's Perry.
Thank you, thank you. Well, I do want to give that opportunity to Kat and Robbin as well to answer that question. You know,
What's the question again?
The biggest personal lesson, or what has been the biggest personal lesson or personal benefit that you have received because of your participation in the International Black Summit?
Well,
And while you're thinking, go ahead.
Go ahead, Robbin.
yeah, I was just going to say, for me, it's clearly, I don't know how, I just love being a facilitator. And the gift I got from being a facilitator was, I've said it several times today, is being able to hear what spirit and what life is saying. That is priceless for me. I love that. You know, that directly came out of the forum. That directly came out of the summit. It didn't come out of, I mean, I got some nice things out of Landmark, but that's not something I got out of Landmark. What I got out of the summit was an appreciation for spirituality. The summit that's where I first got my direct connection to spirituality. I mean, I'm not a religious person. I never was, and I'm definitely not now, but my appreciation for spirit and for spirituality came from the summit. And that is just a gift. That is the biggest gift that I got, was to know that I could access that for myself, that I could hear life, I could hear spirit.
Thank you.
Kathryn?
Oh,
Well, ditto all that what they're saying. I was trying to think of like events and things, but number one is my extended family, the IBS family. I mean, all y'all on here and all the ones that are not, I mean, you're a gift to me. As many of you know, 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with cancer. And so if you want to know, one of my favorite distinctions is alignment. Because I'm very clear that this Summit family was an alignment for my healing. I'm clear I was healed through that. So when that whole expression, when two or more join together, it's, for me, it lives like that for me. And I've had many experiences of the fruits of alignment in this body, in this organization, in my family, the alignment that caused my husband and I to finally get married after 20 years of dating each other, and craziness and really seeing that we really love one another, to the alignment of my relationship with my nephew and supporting him and getting through what he needed to get through high school, and then graduating with just honors, and being able to have a conversation with my sister and her younger son and have that relationship work come into alignment. I mean, there's so many things. There's just so many things. But I guess what I'm saying is really being present to our oneness. That is so magnificent. And that I keep saying that the question for this year, brings you right smack in the middle of that connection that we have with one another as one being, one expression. So alignment is my favorite, and my relationship with all the people in the summit and everywhere else in my world. That's it.
It's good.
Well, thank you all for such a outstanding class. For those of you who want to find out a little bit more about the International Black Summit, we've got a website, www.blacksummit.org. We have an annual event every first full weekend in August. We are looking at doing a blended virtual and in-person for 2023. But certainly you can check out the website to find out any additional information. We talked about distinctions. Yes, there are English words that we use to empower ourselves and to keep ourselves present. So clearing and trigger and noticing and no right way to be are all our toolkits that are provided inside of the space of the International Black Summit so that you can be present to what's going on. As you've heard tonight, being present is a powerful way of listening and allows you a powerful speaking of what is available. So Jackie Grace, anything?
Just a reminder, we usually start these sessions mentioning the purpose of the International Black Summit, and I was so excited about this interview that I dropped it out. But the purpose of the International Black Summit is to provide an opportunity for participants to bring into being their vision for the Black community and the world. And so everything that Glenn just referred to in terms of the declaration and the distinctions and all of the tools, the annual questions, and all of the tools that these original 5 and the 3 who are here were foundational in creating and providing all of us who have participated in the summit over the years with that opportunity to bring into being their vision, our vision for the Black community and the world. And so thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you, Perry, for hanging on.
Can I just say one more thing? I just want to take a moment to just, we talked a little bit before we started the formal part of today, but I really want to acknowledge Anthony and JK, because we would not be the OJs without them and without the contribution that they were. And just acknowledge that is why we are who we are. They're part of us.
And that they're here tonight with us.
I'm counting on it.
Well, once again, thank you so much. Greatly appreciated. Love the conversation. And for you out there in the world, come check us out. We're a loving, caring community of people who are looking to progress our community. Thank you so much for listening. Good night and God bless.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Glenn and Grace. This was great. Thank you.
We're going to stop
everybody who's here.
The session's not ending. We're going to stop the recording now, but for those who can stay, the session's not ending.